Hello friends of YouTube, welcome to another episode of Opa's Vintage Workshop. Today we're going to be working on a 1999 Ford Taurus. We're going to be replacing the rack and pinion. Before we get into the video, I just want to go over 5 things about this job that I want to highlight. I want to put this at the beginning of the video because I'm afraid no one's going to watch it at the end. So 5 things. First thing, talk about the subframe right away at the beginning of this video. I chose not to lower the subframe like a Ford manual will tell you to do. The reason why I didn't do that is so basically you have 4 lift points on a car when you use a hoist. The 2 front lift points where the pad rests up against, it was a little rusty and I didn't want to take a chance, so I actually raised the car up on the 2 mounting bolts of the subframe. Much safer that way. So that's why I chose not to lower the subframe. Second thing, some of the videos out there, they're going to show the guys taking a top shelf or top bracket off of the rack and pinion. I chose to put it back on the remanufactured rack for 2 reasons. First reason is it's got a nice clamp for the high pressure line. The second and most critical reason is that's where you mount the heat shield to. There's 2 Christmas tree fasteners that keeps that heat shield in place. The exhaust pipe coming off the manifold is very close to this rack, so you have to put that heat shield back in again. Third thing is I did pull a vac on the system. I know there's some videos out there where guys would just run the steering wheel back and forth 10 times. I've not had success with a power steering bleed without pulling a vac on it. So that's what I did. I used a little Mighty Vac, and once you watch the video, you'll kind of see the process that I went through. Fourth thing is, it's pretty obvious, but I still have to mention it. You have to get the car aligned after you put a rack and pinion in. It's critical. The fifth and final, I'm not trying to tell guys and gals what to do, but this is a tough job. This is probably not a good job for a beginner or someone with not a lot of automotive experience, because you run into snags here and there. This is probably my 5th or 6th rack, but believe me, it's not like I've done hundreds of them. But it's not an easy job. If you don't have a lot of confidence, take it to an individual that has experience. Anyway, sit back, enjoy the film, and please comment. I love reading your comments. Today we're going to be working on a 1999 Ford Taurus. We need to put a new rebuilt rack and pinion in this vehicle. This is my daughter's car, so let's get started. Troubleshooting, typical. The system ran out of oil and the pump went. Replaced that a couple weeks ago, and the rack started to leak even worse. So I put a little of that snake oil Lucas stop leak in there. It slowed it down a little bit, but it's still, the oil's still coming out of the boots of the rack. And also the other typical place is where the steering wheel shaft connects to it. That's also leaking right there. So anyway, let's enough talk. Got to get this rack done. I'll bring you back on when I'm taking the tires off. All right, guys. Got to lift it up on the hoist now. I was hoping to lower the subframe on this thing, but unfortunately the jack points are a little rusty and it's a little dicey. So, but I know that you can get them out. I've gotten them out before. Not a big fan of removing those subframe bolts anyway, only because sometimes what happens is you try to take those bolts out, and typically there's a nut that's either welded to the top of the frame or it's caged, and anytime it ggets rusty, a 99 is going to be rusty. Might be more trouble than it's worth. Maybe that's a blessing in disguise. So that's what we're going to have to do. Okay, as I'm looking, I can definitely see that it is really coming out of boot. Oh yeah, there is no question this baby needs to be replaced. Okay, well, is it still leaking? Yep, it sure is. So, let's see if I can get you in here. Yeah, it's just puking out on the other side. So, well, I'm gonna get the air box removed so I can get the connections out and reservoir sucked out. Got to remove the rack from the steering shaft, and then we'll be able to start getting those two main bolts out. All right, guys, now it's time to take, I'm gonna take this air box out, and I'll have access to the rack from the top side here. So, basically you just gotta remove it here from the intake, a couple of bolts, get that removed, a couple of hoses, and I can get this out of here so that I have access to some of the lines going into the rack. So I'll bring you back in when I've got this stuff off. Hey guys, I got you underneath the car here. So here's the rack up in there. I'm pointing to it right there. There's that boot that goes to the tie rod end right here. So that's the tie rod end right here. So I think there's two, I'd have to look at the old rack. I think there's two mounting bolts, one here and then one there. The good news is it's all oiled up from all the tranny fluid. So this is gonna be a bit of a challenge getting it out, but not impossible. So this is where we're at. I'll make another assessment here and get you in. All right, guys. So I figured out what I need to remove to get to the two lines that go into the rack. So all the way down, you're gonna see a tube with a fitting, and then right above it, there's an open hole. And those are the two lines that I need to remove for the rack. And basically what I had to do was, actually, move my can, or my right here. So right here, right there, right where the tip of my finger is. That's how you shift the automatic transmission. So you have to take off the linkage right here. There's basically two screws or two bolts that hold in the transmission position sensor, and then there's a bracket that holds the line that you have to take two bolts out. But after you remove that, looks to me like I've got fairly decent access to that. So yeah, it can be done from the top. It would have been a heck of a lot easier if I would have been able to just lower the subframe, but again, I can't do that, so I need to come up with an alternative. But anyway, I don't think this should really be too bad. Also, while I've got you out here, I'll show you the rack I've got, and I got a nice remanufactured Ford. It is Cardone. That's the rack right there. That's for a 1999 Ford Taurus. Anyway, I'll get you back in. Need to buy a wrench. Unfortunately, I cut this wrench. It was a 16 and an 18, and I cut that a while ago because I needed a stubby. Now I need the leverage for the 18 millimeters, so I'll go to O'Reilly's and grab myself another wrench. Anyway, I'll turn you guys back on again when I'm taking those fittings off. All right, guys, I'm hoping you can see this and hear me. I'm kind of holding my phone at a weird angle, but I had a heck of a time trying to crack that flare nut off of that high pressure line. And well, sometimes you got to get a little inventive. I put a vice grip on it and a big pry bar, and I'll be darned if that didn't break it free and did not ruin the flare nut. All right, guys, now there's a little shelf. All right, there you go. Now you can see that. If you can see that hose in the back, there's a shelf that bolts onto the rack and pinion, and it's kind of a bear to get out, especially if you're not lowering the subframe. It looks like the hose there is just connected with those Christmas tree holders. You know, it's that kind of a Christmas tree spike with a clamp around that hose. And what I did is I just took a big old pry bar, big old teeth poker there, big old teeth poker, pry bar, and I just popped that out of there. And you should be good to go. Also, I'm going to raise it up quick so I can show you what you need to do for the two mounting bolts. The nuts should come off fairly easily. And what you want to do is get the nuts off of those two bolts that hold the rack to the subframe, and just use your air hammer. Just kiss them a little bit. So there's one of the holes right there, and you want to make sure to get those out of there. There's the second one right there. You want to make sure you get those out of there because they're going to hang up when you try to pull it through the side. And the reason why you have to use you can use I just like to use a pneumatic air hammer just because it causes less damage and it just pops them right out. It's knurled on the end there because the old Ford boys obviously don't want that thing coming loose. So that's what you need to do. I got those two connections off with my vice grip and pry bar. But hey, again, you got to do what you got to do. Get this stuff done. So, enough talking. I got to start working. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the steering wheel shaft coupler from the rack itself. Okay, so I did a little pre-work. There's your steering shaft that goes into the rack. So there's 3 nuts that you have to remove to remove this little rubber boot. Once you get those nuts removed, all you gotta do is just get this thing out of the way, and voila, there is your coupler. So I like to do this last. So I'm going to pop the tie rods out and disconnect that nut on the coupler, and this should be good to go. Okay, fellas, I got the coupler off. Now my process, because it's loose, it's advisable to use an air tool because it just zips right off without causing any problems. But that's what the bottom of the coupler looks like, and that's the stub coming out of the rack. So, okay. Alrighty, guys, I tried pulling it out from the side, and unfortunately there is a clamp that's still holding I think that's the high pressure side. I gotta sock it up in there. I'm gonna zip it off with an air tool. So I'm gonna do that quick. So fellas, that's, so there's that, on the passenger side, there is a Christmas tree with a clamp, and then a clamp that holds the high pressure side. And a little tip for you, take that off first. It's going to be much easier taking that high pressure line out of the rack. Okay, go ahead. All right, guys. I think we've got everything unhooked now. So yank this thing out of here. All right, guys. I forgot to disconnect the oxygen sensor, and I got that out of the way now. And I just gave it a quick tug, and it started to come, so I thought I'd better turn the camera on so I can show you guys how this thing comes out. Alrighty. Okay, baby, come on. Just the right little. There, we got her. Alrighty. And, oh, there's the rack. She popped out. Alright, good, good, good. Oh boy. That sucker is leaking like a sieve. Okay. Alrighty. Doesn't look like we damaged anything in there. It's just very, very oily. Wowza. Okay. That poor rack has been dumping. I should probably just drench it with brake clean. That's what I think I'm gonna do. Well, let's at least get started. I'll keep you guys on. That wasn't too bad. It fought me a little bit. I did go and get some new tie rod ends. Those still have pretty good feel to them, but I'm done fighting this thing. Oh, that's not gonna fit on there. That's all right. Oh heck. I need to drench that thing with brake clean. I got it all right up in there. Hope I do. That's all right. That's not going to hurt anything. It's up high enough. Well, good. I was hoping I didn't get the camera all full of brake clean. Alrighty, guys. Alright, guys. So I got her all put back together again. I'll kind of go over that here shortly. But I got the connections tightened up, and sure enough, that little sensor's leaking. And surprisingly, I was smart enough to go grab one. Matter of fact, I grabbed that whole high pressure line just to be on the safe side in case I had to replace it. So it looks like it's just that sensor, so that's good news. That's going to save the project about 80 bucks. So I can give that back to the boys over at Napa. Anyway, I'm going to replace that, do another pressure check. Pretty sure we got her this time. As you can see, hopefully you can see. All right, get my alrighty, yeah, you see those connections are all nice and dry. So just that sensor. Gotta replace that, and I think it should be good to go. 'Cause it was hard to tell. I mean, it was murder she wrote in here before. There was fluid coming out of everything. So anyway, yeah, I'll pop that thing out and get you back in. Yep. Okay, well, that all appears to be dry in there. Alright, guys, I thought I'd bring you in here. As I said before, I did put 2 new tie rod ends on. I opted to go with sealed this time. The other ones were greasable. I don't know. Everybody's got their opinion on it. As you can see, there's the racks in there. You can see the green marks of what the reman people did. Anyway, I didn't video. I didn't record putting it in. It literally took 2 minutes to slide this thing in. Once you get the right angle, it just slides right in on the left side, also known as the driver's side. So you got to bring it in and out of this driver's side, because you know where the steering knuckle connects to the rack and pinion. That's the shortest distance from here to there. So obviously you want to remove it out of this side. So yeah, no issues really putting it in. Other than that, when I did a pressure check, that darn sensor was leaking, but I got that all buttoned up. Doesn't look like it's dripping anymore. And there's the other side. Everything's looking good. The rack and pinion and entire power steering system. I know there's fellas out there that swear they just turn the wheel back and forth 10 times without a vacuum and it'll work. I've not had a lot of success doing it that way. I just use my little Mighty Vac, put a nice draw on the system, and then start it, and then you're able to get all of that air out. Okay, that sounds good. You want it to start whining because that means it's pulling the air out. So kind of run your rack back and forth about 10 times. There, now when you release the pressure on there, you don't have any sounds now. Exactly what you want. And when you look down in that fluid, you shouldn't see any air bubbles. Just the flow. Nope, that fluid looks good. So that's a quick and easy way to get this thing bled. This is a little plug that I've had forever and just a little Mighty Vac. I like it putting the cup on there because if you do draw any fluid, it'll just go in this cup. But yeah, that pump sounds really good, nice and quiet. So, and the last little check. Take that off, make sure there's no air bubbles. Oh, that looks pretty good. Yep. Check the fluid level. And that is right at the upper mark. So, there you go. Right, guys. Trying to button this thing up, and I notice another puddle underneath the car, and I'm like, oh no, I wonder if it's the low side for the power steering. Nope, it is. Let me see if I can get this weight situated over here. So it is this lower line. This is the line that goes into the transmission cooler. It's pretty rusty, and I popped this little plastic cover out of the inner fender, and I could see just a small stream spraying out of there. So the good news is the O'Reilly boys can get her tomorrow. So I'm going to put those, I'm just going to replace them both. So they're getting them from the DC. So we get those babies put in tomorrow. Otherwise, power steering seems to be good. Started it up not too long ago. I put some towels over this and turned the wheel, and sounds like I've got all the air bubbles out of the system. So rack's a success. Now we know why. Now we know where the transmission fluid is going. Again, this was a disaster underneath there. I mean, it was murder she wrote underneath there with all the red fluid everywhere. But the good news, though, is it's dry now. I can't remember the last time this car didn't leave a small oil spot. So I think we're getting closer. Now all we gotta do is just get those two lines replaced and we're good to go.